Hi, good afternoon and welcome. So here we are. We're going to be talking with Jason Meshekow and Kurt Suh in a little bit. They'll be talking about navigating the strange world of cyber risk, cyber exposures, and cyber gotchas with Jason and Kurt. Kurt's a new addition to the broadcast, so we're looking forward to talking with both of you. I'm, as I said, Stan Stahl, president, founder of Secure the Village, and this is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So I just want to call that out to everybody. This is the time. Be cyber smart. That's what this is all about in its broadest sense. I'm going to open up the line to let a lot of you promote you to panelists as well, so we can talk together, and this will be more of a conversation, which I always prefer than just talking heads. So I'm multitasking right now as I do this. Got one more to go. That's Grant, and everybody now is a panelist. So welcome as panelists. And so Cybersecurity Awareness Month, it's part of, I said, we're the Insurance Brokers Cybersecurity Roundtable. We meet every Tuesday, third Tuesday of every month from 2 to 3. And the idea is to help you insurance brokers better meet the needs of your clients with the idea that if not only can you help them by getting them in the right policies, but in addition, anything you can do to help them stay safe so they don't become victims of ransomware or business email compromise or any of those things, all the better, because that saves money on all counts. It saves jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So today we've got, as I said, Jason and Kurt. Next month, we've got cyber breach case study with my friends Brad Merriman and Joe Greenfield of Merriman and Associates. They play on the incident response side. And the month after that, we're going to be looking at top-down security from the top, frameworks and goals and objectives. What are we trying to do here? So we are, as I said, Secure the Village. We are a community-based response to the cybercrime and privacy crisis, with the idea being that our objective really, we've got to turn people into cyber guardians, people that know all about cybersecurity enough to know what to do to keep themselves safe, to keep their community safe, and are committed to doing that. And we're 501c3, always so grateful to the CPA firm Miller Kaplan. They're our platinum sponsors. If others of you would like to become sponsors, just shoot Devin Terry, Devin at securethevillage.org, shoot her an email. So, our co-host is Grant Hester, as I said. Grant, are you online? I think you are. You want to say a few words? Let's see.
Looks like can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're there. Hi, Grant.
How's it going?
Great. Why don't you introduce yourself? Standard alligator. Sure. Elevator speech. I think there's a difference between alligators and elevators.
Yeah, I'm Grant Hester. I'm a president of Lynchpin IT. I'm an actual IT consultant who works only with insurance agents. And that's how I got connected up with Stan.
Right, well, we're grateful. I mean, you're the one, you called me, you said, hey, why don't we do something like this? And I said, great idea, So let's, super, thanks for doing that. Let's go around, we've got a little bit of time. So everybody gets a chance to introduce themselves and say hello, who they're from and how they're connected. I recognize some of the names on here and others are new to me. So Amy Ham. You might be muted. Okay, we'll come back. Steve Krantz, go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Krantz. I'm recently joined Secure the Village and focusing on personal cybersecurity. And just published a book called Cyber Guardian, a Secure the Village Guide for Residents, and I hope you'll give it a look. I think it'll be helpful.
Absolutely, and I'll promote it as well later. It's you're towards the ends of my slides. Let's see. Who wants to go? Let's see. Amy, are you online yet? You're not on video, so I don't know if you're muted. I see you're muted. In fact, everybody looks muted. So, okay. And I see Rahul Gupta as well, Orange County DA's office. How are you, Rahul? Oh, your audio.
Stan,
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear me.
There. Now I can. Your audio was off for a moment.
Good to be with you, Stan. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. It sounds like the audio and all isn't working well. It may be my bad. Just I'm on a remote line and shouldn't matter because everybody is connected to it. But we'll have time to get some conversation going later. So let's instead let me go on with my slides and cartoon. Some of you may have seen this, some of you may not have. It's time with cybersecurity, cybercrime being what it is. Maybe it's time to try a different approach this year. So Jason, I'll introduce you, but then why don't you introduce Kurt as well, since Kurt's new to me. But for those of you who are watching the screen, Jason's on the board of Secure the Village. He's the principal and co-founder of InTouch Insurance Services, does a lot of work in the Errors and Omissions, D&O, and Cyber Liability, particularly. That's what brings Jason as much to us. Jason, we've known each other for about 20 years now. So I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce Kurt, and then let you and Kurt take it from there. So
Sure.
why don't you start talking while I set up you for sharing?
Very good. Thank you, Stan. Stan and I have known each other for a long time. Our paths have crossed. I've been in the business over 20 years on the commercial and personal insurance as well as risk management. So I wear two hats as a broker. InTouch Insurance has been around for over 10 and a half years. We're licensed in 32 states. Our clients range from for-profit, nonprofit, manufacturers, distributors, wholesalers. We have a niche in the technology market. We have a niche in health and human services department, as well as entertainment accounts. So I've known Kurt for about 10, 11 years. Kurt, we've gone back.
Yep.
I met Kurt when he was doing the data and privacy or cybersecurity underwriting for Ironshore. So we've collaborated over the years, and I'll let Kurt fill in the blanks, but thank you for joining us, Kurt. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's really great to meet new friends, new colleagues, and I appreciate the opportunity. So I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia. 35 years. I started my career in commercial banking, moved into public accounting, and then in the early 90s joined FDIC as a federal investigator, doing professional liability claims against failed banks. And then I managed the financial crimes practice in the Northeast. So I did a lot of things for restitution recovery, back into the bank insurance fund, did a lot of teaching at the training center in Washington on financial fraud. And that's where I was approached by a guy in '97 that had a vision for hacker insurance. So I left federal service, came to Atlanta, and helped start up the first hacker insurance product that was with InsureTrust. 23 years later, now there's over 150 markets. The market is changing. The threat landscape changes. I'm happy to share a story at some point over beer when we all get together again. But really back in the day, and really the premise of insuring cyber was like insuring a building, where an underwriter would work with an engineer to look at the physical firewalls, to look at the sprinklers of the building, and to engineer the building for sprinkler usage. And if you incorporated all the risk management, you would get a discount. And that's where cyber insurance had started, doing the vulnerability testing against a network. So Jason, and so I left Iron Shore 2018 to start Cyber Special Ops. And really what I saw and the need was, if only 2 out of 10 companies buy cyber insurance, who do the other 8 companies call? So I trademarked Concierge Cyber, which is very similar to Concierge Medicine, where you pay a minimal nominal annual membership fee to gain access to third-party service providers to help respond and minimize a financial loss to a cyber event.
Interesting business model. Very nice.
We'll
Thank you.
go over that as we go. Yeah, the business model is great, and we'll go over his slide, and we'll dive deeper into what Kurt offers and how it complements an insurance broker and companies that don't have cyber liability insurance policies and don't want it, because there's some people that think it's not going to happen to them.
Mhm.
And then I'll show you how that incorporates that. Let me get into my slides, and then we'll go from there.
Cool.
Oh, I have to share my screen first. Let's see, right there. I got it. Okay. So one of the hats that I wear, and that's where I collaborate with the Kurt of the world, is the cyber risk and the cyber risk manager. And what InTouch does and how we differentiate ourselves is that we use cybersecurity or we use risk management to do a holistic assessment of what a vulnerability is or what their exposure is to a company. So one of the things that we help do is we help businesses negotiate and procure appropriate cyber and technology insurance policies. We collaborate with the IT department on breach avoidance and processes and procedures. We facilitate and implement pre-risk assessments. And we work with insurance companies and legal counsel to ensure that appropriate remedial measures are implemented on a timely basis in the event of a breach. At the end of the day, we want to be proactive. We want to go ahead and say, okay, I know that you as a company feel that you might have an exposure, but we need to work to see what those exposures are and implement processes and procedures before we go ahead and implement the insurance policy. And as Kurt will attest to this, no question, as an underwriter, and he's been an underwriter for a long time, if you put the policies and procedures in place and you have the proper steps on the proactive side, Kurt, would you say on the underwriting side that that would be more of a favorable insurance premium than if you didn't?
Yeah, absolutely. So generally, and just briefly, how the cyber insurance is calculated, the premium, is typically you start with the industry class, and you're just typically broken out with 5 levels, where 1 is the most generic, less riskiest, and 5 being the riskiest. You start off with the industry, then you look at the annual revenue per year, then you look at prior acts, although most people are now giving 5 years prior acts or full prior acts.
Right.
And then it gets into the underwriting expertise of the risk factors. So then take into account the financial condition of the company, the experience of management, and security protocols, whether it's the people, processes, technology, and you can debit or credit the account and the premium depending upon all that.
Mhm.
So that's something that, from an underwriting standpoint, that gives you some insight as far as what the carriers are looking for, and having the proper steps on the pre-breach side is important. When you talk about what is involved with a breach coach or a cyber lawyer, I advise everyone, and Kurt would agree, and we have a good friend that is, his firm is on the leadership council, um, engaging a cyber attorney to do an assessment. They're advising on standards to be met with secure data and paper records, conduct pre-breach tabletop exercises, data breach incident counsel, so you know who to go to in case there's a breach. And they're advising on standards to be met to secure all your data, electronic and paper records, if anyone is keeping any paper records today. This is key. This is a breach coach. I've got 6 breach coaches on speed dial on my phone that I have a personal and professional relationship with. And I advise any insurance broker that's out there that is selling and doing assessments on data and privacy security, as well as cyber liability coverage, you definitely need to go ahead and make friends with a cyber attorney, and that's on that side. No question about it. And then engage them meaning the law firm as well as the company, into dialogue. And Kurt would agree, these cyber, these breach coaches, some policies or some insurance carriers will let them be part of the panel in case there's a breach. Kurt, when you were with Ironshore, did you accept the breach coaches or the law firm if they were not on panel, or how did that work? For the people that are out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So regardless of whatever vendor, whether it was a forensics company, a public relations, or whoever, a law firm, really it looks, the claims management team are going to look at the expertise. How long have you been doing it? How many breaches have you handled? And then what's your hourly rates? Generally speaking, you're looking at maybe in working with an insurance company, because there is an expected volume, law firms cut their rates anywhere from 35 to 50% off the mark. So, and what's interesting is now that I should point out that, so there is flexibility, Jason, with a carrier. But again, there are some markets that will say you have to have prior written consent to use outside counsel. So you just, you have to get the carrier's approval before you do anything. I just put a caveat though, that oftentimes I call it the plumber issue. So that when you have a breach, like a water leak at home, the first person you pick up and call is not your Allstate. You call your plumber. Hey, I've got a massive water leak. And the plumber says, fine, it's $1,000, for this job to get it done, versus, so in the analogy of a cyber incident, if you're going to bring someone in at the last minute and they're going to charge $2,000 an hour, all right, then what happens, right? And so I always would have the position, okay, we will pay reasonable and customary for that. So maybe we'd pick up $350 out of the $2,000. And if the insured really wanted to use a third-party relationship, we're only going to pay you up to a certain amount. So that's the way you can negotiate it in working with your broker. But caution though, I've seen claims where people didn't use the breach counsel. It's almost like out of network with an HMO. You could have problems for getting reimbursed because they're not on the panel, and that could be an issue though, depending upon the market.
And does anybody have any questions on that? Or I hear some noise. Okay. When to Kurt's point, when as a broker, and we have 40 to 50 we're a direct agent on, and then we go into the wholesaler to the GAs and the MGAs. I always ask them, okay, with this specific carrier, who's on panel? And I do that in conjunction with the insured to make sure, okay, do you work with a specific law firm? And if you do, name 2 or 3 that you work with, and I'll see if they're on the panel. Because to Kurt's point, yeah, if that plumber is not in network, it can be a lot of money out of your pocket. But there's no question that a lot of the top firms in the country have a cyber and data privacy department. So that's something that you can work with the insured with and the carrier if you're going to procure it. But there definitely needs to be a relationship before a breach happens, in my opinion. And I advocate that strongly with all of the clients that we represent. Before I even write the policy, who do you work with and do you have a relationship?
Yeah. If I could just jump in for a second
Sure,
on
go
that point, Jason and Kurt.
Sure.
We've got a couple of webinars on the Secure the Village website currently, historically, where what you just said is absolutely. We've talked to other insurance brokers. We've talked to forensics, investigative people, and always that idea, get your lawyers on board first is just, it's not just something that I recommend that you're recommending. It's almost universal. It is universal.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the other, I agree, Stan, and it's really important in the sense that, having that attorney-client privilege. So what happens in the breach scenario, in a claim scenario, is when the insured calls the hotline, they get hold of the law firm, and the data breach is more like the traffic cop and coordinating the dance of everyone. But that law firm then will engage the forensics firm under attorney-client privilege, okay? And so that's critical. Now, there's been some incidents, I think it was Capital One, where it's been challenged and so forth, where the forensics report was provided to a multitude of people. And then once you start providing things out of the third parties, you may lose privilege. So keeping that, keeping the information in a tight arena of people that need to know. So that's an important thing to look with now. And again, whether you want to use your own security company, that's not necessarily a problem. Just the carrier will want to understand the expertise, the billing and the rating system, but they certainly wouldn't want to bring a company that is learning. And then if something happens and blows up the matter, then that claim is going to be significantly more than what it could have been paid.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, no question about it. And I see it all the time. I mean, insureds want it not just on cyber, but if they have a directors and officers and employment practice liability and they have a claim, even though they know that they have to use the counsel that's been assigned to them by the insurance company, they're still going to go ahead and use their own firm because they're comfortable with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's a lot of pre-law services as well that carriers try to market.
Yep.
And unfortunately, I could tell you that we had over 5,000 enforced cyber policies, probably less than 0.5% even registered on the pre-loss website. I even offered Homeland Security CQ program for critical infrastructure, doing free vulnerabilities. Very few times would an insured even utilize free services. Some did, but again, I think people are so involved in their day-to-day operations. The game changer, Jason and Stan, as you see, is ransomware's really changed the cyber insurance arena and wire fraud. But ransomware and the sales objections where you'd hear, the IT manager saying we've got it locked down and everything. That's fine, But what about it's not just your network. A smaller company outsources everything to third parties. So what does that contract say, right? You're not an attorney. So working with either your outside counsel to look at how does the contract with that vendor deal with indemnification, hold harmless and confidentiality, right? It's not an IT issue, Yeah. And so looking at that, because the insurance falls to third-party service providers as well, provides coverage of your data with third parties. Theft of money. How does that impact an IT manager? We've seen a lot of phishing. I've seen phishing not just by email, but I've seen people where they're calling the bank and saying, I know here's 15 things: my Social Security, my average daily cash balance, my average daily line of credit withdrawal, and authenticate on behalf of a corporate borrower and saying, I want to set up a sister company, tie the checking in, the savings account, and next thing you know, $1 million drawn from the line of credit. And then the next day, the actual company calls and says, I'm down $1 million in credit. Where did money go? Well, you called us yesterday. Well, no, I didn't call you. And so then the question is, was that corporate bar of the bank hacked and the bad guys basically used the information to fool the banker? Now the banker may say, well, you have callback provision and stuff, but they mess up too. They had they had an error, an omission. So, so that's not a technology issue too. So whether it's physical security, oral information, or oral social engineering, not everything falls on the IT person. And so that's been the challenge. And ransomware, indiscriminate. I mean, Jason, you've probably seen clients. I mean,
I've had three ransomwares with clients, and to your point, Kurt, it's becoming systemic. And the third slide that I have is really the cybersecurity of the business intelligence, like we were talking about. So they go hand in hand with the insurance policy, the cyber policy, as well as the breach coach. So they're all basically working together to help the insured. So again, I don't know and maybe some of the brokers that are on here can talk about if they have any relationship with cybersecurity companies. Kroll, Crypsis, Critical Start, RSA.
Kaplan.
Pardon me?
Miller Kaplan.
Miller Kaplan, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
These are vital for, I have the relationships with it, and Kurt will get to his piece in a second, but having relationships with these individuals, and that can work, again, it works the same as a breach coach on the panel of the insurance department. So for example, Kurt, your example on ransomware, I've got a client, early 70s, winding down his career. He's a pension and ERISA attorney. A year and a half ago, he gets onto his computer at home, and he's got the blue screen that says, Mr. December's got your data. If you want your data back that's encrypted, we'll give you the decryption keys for, I want to say, 15 Bitcoin.
Right. Yeah.
What do you do? And he calls me, we file a claim. It happened to be with Hiscox, which is a good form. And we got the cybersecurity team involved, and we got the breach coach involved, and the IT. And it was a process, because if you don't have the right backups and you don't have redundancy and two-factor authentication, there's a lot of security that you can put on there, especially if you're using a remote desktop to get onto your files from the office. And that's how they got in, through a malware. And I've seen it. And I had 2 more ransomwares this year, and 1 cyber extortion.
Yeah. Well,
one thing that people don't talk about, I've insured a lot of municipalities and school districts, and cyber special ops does as well. I offers memberships, but what really people don't talk about, the issue is the programming that those municipalities used were in Fortran and BASIC and Pascal, and no one programs in that language anymore. And they're all on platforms where they can't get the programmers. They're all dying off and retiring. And so that's been the issue of, now some of the policies have betterment provisions. So if you're, if you have a network, and the carrier will actually better the hardware and everything if they feel like it's going to be a better secure platform.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So these are 5, just bullet points of, incident response, forensics, and negotiation, because, we use a cybersecurity company for one of the ransomwares, Kivu, and they were negotiating with the bad guys. Most of them are ex-law enforcement, and sometimes they'll bring in law enforcement. And I have relationships not only from the cybersecurity side, but from law enforcement with the Secret Service, because Secret Service has a cyber espionage division and the ransomware divisions within that, and they have task force that work with the local police department or the LA Cyber Crime Lab, which Stan's familiar with. So, intelligence, transaction, due diligence, reputational risks, regulatory and compliance risks. Again, these are all covered under the cyber liability coverage, litigation and disputes, and then information and IP risk. One of the things that I really look at, and I see policies all the time that I get introduced to, is that they don't have the cybercrime component to it. So whether it's an endorsement that's on a package policy, and I'll use that language because we have brokers in the room, or a BOP, they don't offer cybercrime. And cybercrime is social engineering, ransomware, extortion, and it gives you the business interruption loss. And a lot of these policies don't have that. And insureds are running around thinking, oh, I've got a guy that sold me a policy and I'm covered. And I'm like, okay, well, make sure you have X, Y, and Z, and you have that endorsement onto that policy, because it's not going to cover you for that. Some policies don't have the regulatory, like on the slide right here, the regulatory compliance. They don't have that coverage on there. So these are steps that InTouch does to go ahead and say, okay, let me look at what you have. Let me look at what you need, and then let me go ahead and work to give you a couple products that I think you should have.
So
And
Jason,
Yeah.
just to add a little color in that, I've seen some markets, provide maybe on their errors and omission or professional liability, a little cyber coverage. So they're adding the security and privacy liability. Okay. So a financial loss to a third party that sues you in the rendering of professional services. I get that. But here's the issue is, what if you get a ransom demand that we are going, you have to pay us $200,000, or not only will you get you can't get your data back, but if you don't pay us, we're going to release the data. Now, the problem is, if you don't have ransomware coverage, okay, but you have liability, in other words, you can't trigger that policy for any claim expenses because you haven't had any liability. The policy is not going to pay for the fear of getting sued, right? And so it's a pickle that if I'm the client, if I'm the insured and I don't pay it, which I have no coverage for, okay, the carrier that's offering the ransomware is going to negotiate and pay the ransom if necessary. So in other words, to get the coverage invoked, I can't pay the ransom. I have to have a data breach.
You have to kind of let them not pay it and then release the data, and then you can file a claim.
Right. And isn't that crazy? But I've seen that. And so
it's true.
There are markets that will say, well, you've got liability and privacy, it's liability only, but you don't have the business, the ransomware. And so in order to have the nexus of having the claim, you can't pay, you can't pay it. And that way the coverage will be triggered. But that's a really, I think from an E&O, from a broker, that's a scary place to be in, because you're adding coverage. So just be careful of adding a little bit, because it could be crap. You could be putting your client in a worse position.
I probably, to your point, I probably see in the policies that I get referred into, I probably 70-80% do not have the cybercrime component, which is the ransomware, the extortion, the social engineering, the BI on those claims. So they just have, okay, data privacy. So they have the liability, but there needs to be a breach.
Well, and things are changing, because you can't offer $800 or $1,000 a year premium policies and pay $1 million or $200,000 of flipped ransomware. The biggest ransomware insurable ransom I'd seen paid was $50 million.
Yep.
Now, the bad guys, when we started years ago paying, it was 100, maybe 15,000, 3,000. Well, now it's profitable, right? And so anyone that's in law enforcement knows you're incentivizing the bad guy. It's money making.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only going to, so the only things, a couple things have to change. Either the insurance industry stops paying, regulatory, or the regulators or the federal government requires stop paying, which, New York State has proposed that. They've got 2 bills in committee that say that a municipality can't use public funds to pay a ransom. Now, it's still in committee. And OFAC, that came out with Treasury. That's nothing new. You just can't pay someone that's on the sanctioned OFAC list. But, you're certainly going to have to either increase the premium, increase the retention, do something, or get out of the coverage.
Yep.
Mhm.
No question about it. All right, we're going to go on to Kurt's. He's got a solution. If the insured doesn't want to get cyber liability coverage, and if they have it, and Kurt, take it away from your concierge company.
Oh, thanks, Jason. Yeah, so cyber special ops I started 2 years ago when I left Iron Shore with the analogy of the military, a small, very experienced, agile team supported by armies of people. And the armies of people are the vendors that I worked with at Iron Shore, and actually even more so now. So I've got 14 law firms globally, including Europe, Canada, US. I've got identity credit monitoring. I've got about 12 information security forensics companies. Forensics could be into different buckets, whether it's incident response, whether it's e-discovery, whether it's data restoration. There's all different avenues of that. So, and in that process, I've then trademarked the business model of concierge cyber, that my mom, who's in her 80s, her physicians group became a concierge medical group. So mom pays $2,000 a year. She still has health insurance, but she wants immediate access, same day appointments for better patient outcome. And so with Concierge Cyber, we offer for an annual minimum price, access to that third-party vendors where you'll get 35 to 50% off street rates to help respond to an incident to minimize the financial or reputational loss. Now, we have clients that have cyber insurance, but not everything's covered. Right? Maybe it's theft of intellectual property. We had a blood bank that had cyber insurance, but they lost the laptop and it wasn't encrypted. And lo and behold, they had an unencrypted laptop exclusion. So the carrier said, here's the law firm, bring in this forensics firm. Well, they spent $15,000 to evaluate and find 100 records. The client was just beyond himself. So for some brokers, we serve also as your claims advocate. We can help you and your client go through and make sure that the claims process is managed properly. But anyway, so Concierge Cyber, with that membership, you get access to the incident response team that we've trademarked My-Cert, my cyber emergency response team. You get 12 information security policy templates, 2 hours with a virtual chief security officer, pre-loss, and then a ransom hostage manual. And what we say is if there's an incident, we keep it simple. If you don't have cyber insurance, or if you do, you could have a member either, but if you don't, if your client says, well, that's great, I like cyber insurance, but we're not going to buy, fine. Offer this as a gateway service, white glove service. At least they're walking away with something. We typically offer the annual membership at $250, which is a no-brainer. And then they have access to a call center that's staffed by information security professionals to triage the incident like an emergency room. So think of us as the physician. Think of the call center as the hospital emergency room. It's triaged. And from there, depending on the situation, it goes to one of our law firms. Upon determination, do you have standalone cyber insurance? Yes, no. If it's a yes, we make sure that the matter that goes to the law firm stays in network. Like an HMO, we guarantee. So the call center knows with what insurance company, what law firms work with those markets. And so they select a My-Cert panel member law firm. It's on the carrier's panel. So it's seamless to the member. So we make sure you stay in network like an HMO. And then from there on, then we're done. So basically we're providing access. And certainly we can help in the claims and the cyber claims advocacy on your behalf. But I just saw the need that if 2 out of 10 companies don't buy, or if only 2 out of 10 buy cyber, Jason, who do the other 8 companies call? And then really where the market is as a broker, you basically send a letter out saying, okay, you acknowledge that we presented the risk. You're not going to sue us. And, we're closing our file. I just felt, and so we don't work with carriers, we work with brokers. And then we commission brokers as an additional income source, right? So it does a couple things. It provides you guys an annual revenue stream. It gives your clients someone to call as a gateway product for those that don't buy. It's simple. And, it's a win-win all the way around.
Yep.
Any thoughts, guys, on, yeah.
Go ahead, Kurt.
No, I thought Grant was going to say something.
Well, I was going to comment earlier about, we're not an insurance broker, we're an IT company. But I mean, and of course, we always think we know everything about security and IT. And I think it's really important for MSPs that are doing support for any kind of company, not just insurance brokers, that we also engage in a security firm that looks closely at our infrastructure, because a lot of times we're the ones that get compromised, and then all of our clients can also be compromised as well. So we do ongoing audits for us with a security firm in Colorado that just make sure that our infrastructure is as sound as it can be. And like I said, it's really tough for my engineers to think that they don't think that it's hard for them for them to say that, for me to say that I don't think that we're secure as we can be. But you know what? We spend the day taking care of problems for clients that are immediate. We need to have an outside body to make sure that what we're doing is correct and proper.
Yeah, and the model also, so we work with channels of insurance agents, brokers. We work with trade groups, associations, captives. And then, just like when Norton bought LifeLock, it's an antivirus company. And so there's a perfect example of, they're saying, hey, things still happen, even though you're having antivirus and you have firewalls. So they bundle that together. So we also work with companies, IT companies, where they can bundle the concierge membership into their offering. So I just, yeah. So
Yeah. Well, if I can jump in again, I mean, where the discussion is going is this whole idea that it takes the village, if you will. It's all of us working together. Again, in addition to Secure the Village, I'm of course also a director in the CPA firm Miller Kaplan. It used to be my company. We just sold that at the beginning of the year off to Miller Kaplan. Some of you know it's the Citadel Information Group, the old company. But this whole idea, and Grant, you said it best. Nobody's 100% secure. Even the military agencies and all. I mean, I started my career in computer security before there was such a thing as cybersecurity. And one of the big projects I worked on, now this is 35 years ago, was in what's called nuclear safety cross-check analysis. And as any time a communication system touches your missile, all the development effort, all the time and energy you spend developing that system, there's a corresponding complementary company that looks at the development all the way through the life cycle, through requirement setting and testing and so on, just to make sure that mistakes aren't going to be made and missiles are going to go off by accident or aren't going to go off and things like that. And that's kind of where I learned this concept of it taking the village. But it's like what you said, Kurt, about having an unencrypted laptop excluded. When we walk into a company, and now I'm wearing the Miller Kaplan hat, not the Secure the Village hat, but we go in and we'll assess companies. We'll look at their IT vendors like you, Grant, and we'll see, are they encrypting all the laptops? Are all the servers kept separate from the internet so they're not addressable? We've got 400 standards, something like that, all based out of NIST and all the appropriate places. But that whole idea that you really got to take a deep look. I mean, I once reviewed an insurance policy for a client that would never have paid off if you looked at the terms and conditions of it. The broker was either incredibly cynical or did not understand that. And I trust he didn't understand it because it's subtle. I mean, this is not easy stuff if you're not used to it. And the client certainly didn't understand it. And so here you are in a situation where potentially good, well-meaning people on all sides, just stuff slips through the crack. That unencrypted laptop might have been the same kind of situation. So, I mean, what this whole conversation is surfacing, I think, for all the brokers out there is, the devil's in the details. It does take that village. All all of us kind of working together that way. Yeah. Back to you, Jason. Yeah.
No, it's, that's something that, I'm in touch, and I've always partnered on the risk management side, partnering with Kurt, partnering with cybersecurity companies, partnering with breach coaches. So you have a team. So you talk, you really need a team, and you need to educate your client accordingly. Okay, this is where you need to go if there's a breach. If you don't want insurance, I'll give you something to sign the CYA letter. We put it in the file, and then they're on Kurt's they're on Kurt's engage with him, because at the end of the day, more policies are being written by companies that we have that a year, 2 years, 3 years ago, they didn't even want to talk to us. So they have no problem paying $250,000 for health benefits, but they didn't want to buy a cybersecurity policy with cybercrime coverage for $2,500.
Yeah.
No problem. I mean, they did not want to be bothered with it. So now I think, the attention is becoming where we've got their attention, they understand the risk. And as everybody continues to work home and telework per se, or telecommute, whatever word you want to use, that's going to be the norm for years. And it's low-hanging fruit to Mr. December's and all the attackers on the ransomware. I mean, how many, show of hands, how many get random emails about, oh, you've got a UPS package, or you've got, what's the latest one? The Dropbox. Steve Kranz sent me, an email that I haven't gotten his Dropbox. So then you go ahead and click Steve's or his, you think it's from him, it could be spoofed. And the next thing you know, you got malware and you're screwed. So these things are becoming more prevalent to the point where, I wake up in the morning, it's like, okay, what do I do? And that's where Kurt comes in.
Well, not to muddy the water, but it's really interesting. When I was at Iron Shore and we got by for Liberty Mutual, where they really cut their teeth was when some of the property insurance markets started offering cyber. And when NotPetya hit, and it hit Merck Pharmaceutical, you say, how in the world could Merck be hit? But they were down 3 months. There's business interruption. And they had affirmative cyber coverage, a standalone, but the property policy, which was a $2 billion tower, was eroded. And it was, I can't tell you, it was hundreds of millions of dollars worth of claims. And so then the question is, okay, you have coverage and property that has cyber. You have, I'll give you an example, when Lake City, Florida got hit with ransomware, the IT manager for years was telling city council, buy cyber, we need more to do. They didn't give him budget. So when they paid the ransom demand, they fired him. And now he's suing them for wrongful termination, employment practices liability. The case I used, there was a Midwest truck bumper assembly plant, and they used robotics. And they had a system glitch, and a robot went off track with a big trucker bumper assembly and crushed and killed a woman, worker comp. So you have crime coverage, property, you've got professional liability, and all these others in addition to the standalone. So looking at, do you have cyber in, do you have silent coverage in a property or a general liability? Do you have affirmative coverage? Is it excluded? Is it sublimited? So that's where the broker really needs to look at, not just the standalone. You may very well have coverage in other lines, and looking at sources of recovery. So we had an incident where it was a broker sent money to the carrier, who she thought was the carrier, $40,000, but it was, we found out someone in Moscow that spoofed her and just basically went on to it's interesting, you go on an insurance company like Travelers, they put all the agents. You want to find an agent in Travelers? Go on the Travelers website. So the bad guys then were targeting all the agents of that carrier because they knew that they did business with them. And they wanted them at the end of the month. They said, change with a letterhead of the CEO of the carrier, change the routing number and everything. She did that. Money went off. She waited too long. If we have a pretty good success if it's 36 hours and less with the Bureau's RAT team, the recovery asset team. She waited 5 days, it was gone, went overseas. But we found coverage in her business owner's policy for $15,000 in crime coverage, right? Then the question was, why don't you go back to the carrier and, try to get, you don't want to sue your carrier or your partner, but she didn't want to, create a waive because that was a trusted partner or a significant partner, trading partner. So, you may have an incident or a breach with a vendor. Then the question is, do you want to sue that vendor? Do you want to press that vendor? If you're reliant on that company, you may be stuck between a rock and a hard place. Just things to think about, but it's interesting. Every situation is different.
Yeah, we've seen that same thing in all the cybercrime. We've seen something I wanted to call to everybody's attention, if you don't already know about it, going back to the phishing attack, Jason, that you mentioned. Go on your smartphone, look up the Los Angeles Cyber Lab, LA Cyber Lab. They have an app, download it, create an account. And now anytime you get an email that you think is suspicious, you think it might be a phishing attack, you send it to gophish@lacl.org. It's a button on my iPhone, and it goes off, and they'll analyze it. And in the best case, they don't come back and give you data on what they found. But what happens is that information goes into the crime database, and oftentimes through connecting the dots of all these different attacks, they're able to discover who's done what and what the circumstances are, and oftentimes, oftentimes block it, because now certain indicators of compromised bank account numbers and so on are known to be fraudulent, so that they can block those. They can block the websites from which those attacks are coming and things like that. It's another way the village helps the village.
Yep.
And what we see too, as you guys probably see, is a lot of the attacks happen after hours or on a Friday night. Why? Because it gives the bad guys 2 days running time. And good luck. Sometimes and we found while the law firms say they have access 24/7, the claims adjusters aren't there. And so if you have to get an approval from the insurance company, that's where we've been able to help members. Is we'll dig down through our underwriting contacts to get to the claims attorney. But that's been a real challenge. And ransomware is so bad right now that even bandwidth for some of the vendors has been short.
Yeah. Let me open. It's getting on, getting up to the hour. Let me open it up to questions. If people have questions they might want to ask, and see if give a couple of seconds for people to kind of jump in. Don't be shy.
I think Michael, I haven't seen you in years. How you doing, Michael? I don't know if he's on, but there's Michael.
I was going to make a mention about a certain 14-year-old Laker fan, but I decided to be nice. But since you called me out, I won't be nice.
14-year-old Laker fan.
Wow.
Back in your father's old office when I was on the other side of the wall. But anyway, yes, I'm here.
Yes.
Cool.
How you doing, Michael?
Long time. Good, thank you. I did post a question there in the chat because I couldn't get the question thing there. I'm gonna go ahead and mute myself, but I was just wondering about that. I think maybe it kind of got mentioned a little bit earlier, but I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Yeah.
What about the new? Go ahead, read it, Dan. You can read it.
Did you see it, Jason?
Yeah. What about the advisor that's paying a ransom actually triggers supporting terrorist activity?
Yeah. This was in the news a week ago. Brian Krebs wrote about it, so did several others. And it's this, to me, not being in insurance and, we're all against terrorism, but that's as close as I get to being an anti-terrorist, if you will. To me, it's a right hand, left hand. Well, could we talk to each other? Let's get a unified response to this stuff, because I don't know what it must be like to be involved, to be the victim of ransomware. But you're on the spot to make some really tough decisions in a short amount of time, when your whole company could be down. And it's like, well, what are we going to do? And to be put into a position where you might, to keep your business going, pay a ransomware attack, a ransomware bribe, if you were, or payment, and then to be arrested for that, or to be prosecuted for that, strikes me as, we haven't gotten our act together yet on this subject. I don't know how the rest of you think about it. Yeah.
Kurt, are you running into that on the terrorist side?
Yeah, so look, provide a little color in that. So New York State, about a year, early this year, put 2 bills in committee to address the payment of ransomware by municipalities with the use of public funds. It's still in both committees. It hasn't come out. It'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah.
When Treasury put out that advisory last week, basically the gist is that, and in the insurance world, when we get a submission in, the underwriting assistants have to clear that submission with Treasury's OFAC, the Overseas Foreign Asset Control List, to make sure that entity isn't a sanctioned company that's prohibited from doing business in the US or on the terrorist list. And so we want to make sure that we're not going to be providing coverage for that situation. Now, on the back end, on a claim situation, the same thing. So in the rendering of a potential ransom demand, that the law firm, in combination with the information security firm that's negotiating down that ransom attack, is going to have to run that whatever they know of the person or entity that they're negotiating with through OFAC to make sure that they're not on the sanctioned list. And basically, the advisory says you can't, if you pay a sanctioned entity or a person, you may be subject to civil fines and penalties. Now, how do you ever know? Maybe it's a straw person acting on behalf, in China, it could be very well a student at the university backed by the People's Republic Army. How do you ever typically know that? You may not ever know that, but I mean, that's the thing. And I mean, the interesting thing though, Stan, is the cyber policies pay civil fines and penalties where insurable. So I guess the argument could be, even if you paid a sanctioned ransom, you've got coverage for a civil fine. And, so even if you are fined by Treasury, the carrier will pay it. I mean, so, until that's tested in court, right now, I wouldn't be concerned about it so long as, but, if you don't have a cyber insurance policy and you simply work with a vendor and don't even do an OFAC review, that could potentially put you in an awkward, hard spot.
Interesting. Fascinating. Okay, I'm going to move on. As I said, we're moving up to the hour. So I'm going to put my screen back on, share that so we can talk about the next one. But as we jump to that, I want to thank you both. This has been very, very informative, I've found, both around the general subject as we're talking about it, and the fact that the focus is on the insurance broker to kind of help you guys, men and women, better get your arms around how do you really help your client in this situation. I'm grateful to both of you and Grant always for your hosting. Here's our upcoming schedule, and there's 3 things I want to call out. One of the issues that we all face in cybersecurity is, what are reasonable security standards? There's no definition, not yet in the courts or anything. It shows up in the law, particularly in the state of California, with the California Consumer Privacy Act. Is basically a get out of jail card free from damages, legislative damage, statutory damages of a breach. But there's no definition of it. In Secure the Village, we've been working on this ultimately for half a dozen years, various aspects of what reasonable might mean. So we're going to do a 2.5 hour in honor of and celebration of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, our 4th annual Cybersecure LA, and that's going to be October 28th. Then November 10th, we have an invitational workshop on workforce development. There's a tremendous shortage of cybersecurity workers. So one of the things Secure the Village is doing is putting together a working group of companies and agencies and universities and all who play in this space. So if you're a company with an intern program or apprentice programs or things like that, please let us know and we'll invite you to the workshop. Or if you know companies, if some of your clients are in that space, let us know. We'd love to invite them. And then we'll be back here in a month. I don't know about the rest of you, but growing up, I read all the Sherlock Holmes stories. And one of my favorite, of course, is the story of the dog that doesn't bark. That's how Sherlock knew it was who the criminal was because the dog didn't bark. Well, there's a dog that didn't bark today. And the dog that didn't bark is the operational side. How do you get ready? How do you get yourself ready so that you can defend adequately against a cyber attack and recover resilient if you get hit? So we're going to spend the next 2 months focusing on the world from the operations side. We're going to start by looking at the case study of a breach. How did it happen? How was IT set up or not set up so that relevant information could be gathered, so that the scope of the breach could be determined? Illustration of that, we were once in a situation, our company got called in after a breach. FBI alerted a company that its IP addresses were showing up in an investigation. We went on in and looked, a lot of personal information in that company, but we were able, not we, but our forensics firm, you'll meet them next month, Brad Merriman and Joe Greenfield, they were able to determine that, yeah, there was a breach, but no information, no sensitive information was exfiltrated, was looked at, was touched. So even as there was a breach, there was nothing to make a breach disclosure on. So we saved that company bundles of money just because we were able to do that. But if you're to do that successfully, you got to be prepared to do that successfully. You got to make sure all the appropriate auditing is turned on and so on. So that's what the next couple of months are going to be. We're going to be looking at those issues. So again, please join us for that. Stay informed. Favorite quotes is Sun Tzu. If you know the enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the results of 100 battles. So one of the things that Secure the Village has done, in fact, Thursday is our 10th anniversary of starting our cybersecurity news of the week. We started it as Citadel. When Miller Kaplan bought Citadel, they gave the news of the week and the weekend patch report to Secure the Village. So we now publish that. But that's it'll be our, as I say, we're starting our 10th year. So if you're not already getting that, please sign up for it. It's free. We are, as I said, Secure the Village. Join our village. Connect with us on LinkedIn. Stay in the know with our news report and so on. The concept, as we keep saying over and over, it takes the village to secure the village. And you're looking at Steve Krantz's book, A Guide for Residents. Very, very, again, it's not designed, this one's not designed for the company, but for the residents themselves, because ultimately we're talking from the boardroom to the living room when we look at Secure the Village. This is our new website. It's coming soon. We'll have it up sometime the next month, I expect. Much newer, fresher, and easier to navigate than what we currently have. On my own side, I not only am the president of Secure the Village and director at Miller Kaplan, I've also written my first book. I started writing essays on freedom, the Thanksgiving after 9/11, asking myself what was I thankful for that year. And it led me to an essay that led me to a second, and somewhat over 80 essays later, I collected them all in a book called The Agnostic Patriot. It's what I talked about earlier. It's part of what I see Secure the Village being able to do is rebuild America. I mean, you don't have to look at the news to know that things are not as well as they could be here in this country. And I would like to think that what we're doing with Secure the Village is help reweaving the fabric of society back together in different ways than we've done. I encourage you to take a look at that if it's of interest. Here's my contact information, Jason's. Kurt, we don't have yours yet, but we'll get that. And happy to
Actually,
have you be a part of us.
Stan, I can show you a slide with Kurt's,
Okay, let me do that. Let me finish here with what is always my finishing. The future is not a gift, it's an achievement. Whether in the political realm or the cybersecurity realm. With that, I'm going to stop sharing. Jason, you share. Let's get Kurt's contact info up online, and then we'll round it out.
Thanks,
Okay.
Dan.
I'm going to show it really quickly here.
Doing that again, Grant, I want to thank you as well for hosting these with me. You'll be back.
Here's Kurt's information. We'll also, I know you're recording it. And then I believe he'll be more involved now that he knows about the organization and Secure the Village, because he would be a valuable member on the Leadership Council.
That's
Absolutely.
good. Well, I appreciate the opportunity. It's really great to meet everyone.
Super. Curtis, with that, thank you. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. See y'all.